we're starting a whole new packet right now, and what we're doing, what I decided to do is that starting probably sometime after the holidays, so early October, we're going to get to a whole new section, which is more legalistic material that we've been used to studying, and it's going to involve the rights of workers and responsibilities of employers, and it's interesting stuff. It's quite interesting. It's interesting. I've been looking through it, how relevant it is. So that's going to be the topic, I would say, probably October through the end of the year, the secular year for sure, and then we'll see how it's going. Just a part of this chapter 7 of Baba Metzia. What I thought I would do is lead into that material with, in the Talmud itself, it's just a few pages before, although it's going to take us a while because you can't go through things that quickly. But it's several stories which don't have really much to do at all with workers' rights or the responsibilities of employers, but they're interesting stories. And we've been studying some stories the last couple of weeks, so I thought we'd continue that. And Talmud has great storytellers and interesting stories and interesting lessons that flow from the stories. These are not very well-known stories, kind of in the atmosphere of Talmud stories that you hear in Hebrew school or from rabbi sermons. These are less known, more ambiguous, kind of weirder stories, but I think they're very interesting and fun. So that's what we're going to do, and it'll go on for a couple weeks, like I said, and we'll probably time it so when we start the adult education year again, like in October, we'll be right where we want to be. Okay, so this is at the top. You got a packet 145. It's the second line in Hebrew. And then the translation and commentary, Elijah. So I'll remind you who Elijah was. This is Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi, who never died and who walks the earth and appears occasionally to righteous people, but not to very many people. And on Passover, he's supposed to announce the coming of the Messiah, which he hasn't done yet, as far as I know. If any of you know otherwise, you should let me know, but I haven't heard anything. Anyway, so Eliyahu. Eliyahu have shechiach b'metifta de Rabbi. So Elijah would occasionally come to class in the metifta. It's interesting because we still use that word metifta. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. You heard that word metifta? Or mesifta, yes. A metifta is yeshiva. It's Aramaic for yeshiva. So some old-fashioned yeshivas are called metiftas or mesiftas. And it's a place of learning. Anyhow, Yehuda Nasi, who was just known as Rabbi, had a yeshiva, a group of students that would gather together. Obviously, that was the Harvard and the Yale of the yeshiva in those days. It was, first of all, Elijah got in. So and Rabbi, who was the leading rabbi of the time, and who actually, you'll see, this is one of the sources for our knowledge that he compiled the Mishnah. So Elijah would come and sit in on his classes. Yom Echad Reish Yarcha. One day, it was the new moon, Reish Yarcha. Yarech is the moon. The new moon, it was Rosh Chodesh, first day of the month. Have Nigale velo ata. And he was delayed, in fact, did not arrive that day for the class. Apparently comes in later. We'll see what happens. Amarle. So now, Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi, sees him later, maybe in the middle of the lesson, not clear, or later in the day. My Tama Nagale Lamar. This is, why did the master come late? The master, meaning, is referring to Elijah. Amarle. Adu okimna. So adu okimna means I was delayed. So I was delayed. I was held up in traffic. Here's what I had to deal with. It's a very interesting, and I can't quite figure out whether there's a relationship here to Rosh Chodesh or not. I assume there is. But Elijah, who, of course, already we're talking about a kind of mystical encounter between a rabbi and a prophet who never died, and so a mystical encounter. Now Elijah gets things weirder by describing an even more mystical encounter for him. Okay, or you could say like mythic or folkloric or whatever. So I was with Abraham. Umeshana yedei, umetzalele. So I was with Abraham, and I had to wake him up. Why wake him up? Because he's dead. It's not so easy to wake up a guy who's dead. I guess Elijah can do it, but I had to wake him up so we could pray together. Maybe they pray together every Rosh Chodesh, I don't know. Umagnidale, and that delayed me. V'chein li Yitzchak, and then I had to go to do it to Isaac. v'chen liYaakov, and I had to do it to Jacob. So I had to wake up Abraham, I had to wake up Isaac, I had to wake up Jacob. There was a kind of ritual that we did together, a kind of prayer ritual, and then I was late to your class. That's a really good excuse for being late to class. If any of you ever have that excuse, that's perfectly acceptable. You were with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you were praying together. So for Elijah, I would accept it. It seems like a pretty good excuse. It raises all sorts of questions. And you'll see, Rabbi has the most obvious question. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah.
Why do you assume they were dead? Why don't you assume he was there?
In heaven?
Well, heaven, or he transcends time, so he's there. Like, we're all now at Sinai. So there's
okay.
Time.
Well, that could be. I mean, I assume they're dead because, in fact, they are dead. I mean, in real time, Rabbi's time, they're dead. And the idea of waking somebody up, well, we have other stories where, like a Jeremiah goes and has to wake up Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses so they can plea on behalf of the Jewish people. Right. So there is a sense that dead people are sleeping.
Is that reasonable to expect that it's a metaphor for going back and waking up your connection to
Sure.
to the past?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways we could look at this metaphorically, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll go on. You'll see. We'll play with that idea. All right. So, but Rabbi was very practical and doesn't appreciate anybody being late to class, even if you're Elijah. He says, "V'lo kminu b'hadeh hadadeh." So, why don't you just wake them all up one at a time, and do the whole thing one at a time? Because he says, well, first I had to go to Abraham, then I had to go to Isaac, then I had to go to Jacob. So Rabbi, just a time-saving piece of advice: do them all at once. Then it takes much less time. Okay. Now is a very interesting answer. Savri is afraid. Takfi birachme umaite leila Mashiach below zimne. So if I were to do that, takve birachme, their prayers would be so acute, so striking, so strong. Maite leila Mashiach, they would bring about the Messiah before it's supposed to come. So I'm actually afraid of the power of their prayers, the three of them together. I can't have them all three praying at the same time. If all three of them pray at the same time, that will bring out about the Messiah, and that would be very bad news. This sort of transforms all our expectations. First of all, you want Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob because you like powerful prayer, and then you think you want the Messiah, and he says both of those actually could be harmful. Really powerful prayer can be harmful, and it's very harmful to bring the Messiah before it's time. And he doesn't explain why. Like, what would be wrong with having the Messiah before it's time? He assumes in some ways that Judah understands why, although you'll see Judah doesn't understand why. Judah's a greedy human being, like all of us, and he preferred the Messiah to come right now. But Elijah's actually letting him in on a secret. The Messiah could come too soon. Be careful what you wish for. The Messiah can come too soon, and that will create trouble. Now, he doesn't say what the trouble would be. But the reader, of course, I think is conscious of the possibility of a prayer that's too strong and the Messiah coming too soon. All right, let's keep going. Amarle. V'yesh dugmatam ba'olam hazeh. So he says, are there people like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob like that? Dugmatam. In that pattern, in that dugma. Are there people like that now in this world? So Rabbi isn't applauding. He's thinking, wow, if Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just through the force of their prayer, could bring about the Mashiach, maybe... Well, I don't have access. He's thinking, I don't have access to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because that's in the next world. But maybe there are people I have access to in this world, and I can gather them. This is what he's thinking. He doesn't tell Elijah that. But this is what he's thinking, and I can get them together, and they'll pray, and they'll bring the Messiah. Because Judah's not concerned about whether it's the right time or not for the Messiah. We want Mashiach now. Do you remember that? I want it now. Yeah, that was actually, they don't say it as much. Yeah. But that was actually the slogan of the Chabad movement. We want Mashiach now. So we don't care if it's too soon. So Judah wants it now, and he's just asking slyly. He's trying to trick Elijah. So he's asking him slyly, maybe shyly too, slyly. Hey, are there any people? Just curious. Are there any people that have that kind of prayer, the force of that prayer right now, living now, that I can talk to? And he says, Amar le Ika Rabbi Chia uvanav. There is Rabbi Chia and his prayers. Rabbi Chia is a contemporary of Judah. Just there's a side note. You see it in Rashi, I think, or maybe you see it in Steinsaltz. So Judah is famous. He's famous because he was the leading rabbi of his time and the president of the assembly, but he compiled the Mishnah. Rabbi Chia, according to the tradition, compiled a book known as the Tosefta, which is less famous. But the Tosefta is a gathering of miscellaneous statements that didn't quite make it into the Mishnah, but still have the force of tradition and law. So he was also a great scholar and also authored an important book. Okay, but apparently he could really pray. He's really good at praying. What does that mean? His prayer had some kind of spiritual force. All right, Achtinu, Gizar Rabbi Tanita. So Rabbi, who is the leader of the community, decrees a fast. You could decree a fast for all sorts of reasons. The most common is drought. So there's drought, so we decree a fast, so God can see our fasting and bring rain. Also, by the way, fasting in this, just because we're coming to this day, Yom Kippur, fasting in this context is not meant to be something that causes you pain or deprives you of something, or is a kind of suffering where God looks at our suffering and feels sorry for us and therefore brings about rain or forgives us. That's not actually a Jewish way of looking at suffering. So Jews don't actually look at suffering as being beneficial in any way. Which is different than Christianity, which of course does look at suffering as being, Jesus suffers for us. We don't have that concept, and so that's a source of confusion, because we think we're fasting to make ourselves miserable, and God sees how miserable we are, and therefore God feels sorry for us, and therefore God will forgive us. But fasting is meant to bring about a transformed consciousness, a state where your prayer really has meaning. So that's why he does it. So because he wants to create an atmosphere where prayer is really strong and emotional and powerful. And it doesn't say on what ground he ordered the fast. But there's no shortage of problems. You can always pick the Iran deal. We all have to fast. I don't know. The Jews are blessed with lots of problems. So Rabbi picks one and says we're going to have a fast and really pray to God. Okay, but really he's got a secret plan here. The secret plan is to bring Rabbi Chia and to have him pray and bring about the Messiah. So we have no problems whatsoever.
We talked about the word for fast, because Tanita is both answer and to suffer.
To suffer, right? It's in there, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. That's right. It kind of works for both.
Yeah.
Okay. Achtinu Rabbi Chia v'anav. So he summoned Rabbi Chia and his sons, Amar. So they're praying now. They're leading now the prayer. So there's this community prayer. So it's not just these guys that are praying. Everybody's praying, and they're praying. What's interesting is they're praying a prayer that we all know, because we come to services every day, and many of you know it by heart. It's the Amidah. So I'm going to say words that are familiar. So he says, Amar Mashiv HaRuach. So apparently it was the time of year. It was fall. What do you say? Let's go over it. Mashiv HaRuach U'Morida Gashem. What comes next? What? Just anybody know? What prayer are we referring to here? Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechaye Meitim B'Rachamim Atah. Right. And then you have in there you have Mashiv HaRuach U'Morida Gashem. Okay, so he says Mashiv HaRuach, God makes the wind blow. V'nashva Zika. There is a wind. A wind comes. So just him saying it, this shows how powerful it is. Just him saying it makes the wind blow. Amar Morida Gashem. He says Morida Gashem, let the rain come. V'ata Mitra, rain comes. So, we already know this guy's talented at prayer. So what's going to come next? Well, here's where there's actually, Rashi points this out. There's a little confusion, because in the prayer itself, it comes before. Yeah. But apparently in this prayer, but there's a good explanation for it. But so hold on. V'chi mata lememar, as he was about to say, Mechaye HaMeitim. Mechaye HaMeitim is he brings the dead back to life. Okay, look, it's one thing to make some wind blow. It's one thing to make a little rainfall. But if he says Mechaye HaMeitim, are the dead going to rise? We'll have zombies, and that's. But it's also the coming of the Messiah. So Ragash Alma, the entire world trembles, which is probably an idiomatic expression, meaning that there's a great anticipation. Is he going to actually bring the dead back to life? Now, all right, I'll stop for a second and say, actually, the Mechaye Meitim Ata Rav Loshia comes before. So if he had said the prayer right, he would have gotten to Mechaye Meitim. So there's also the possibilities. It's possible, remember this is the 2nd century, it's possible they had a different text than we have. I mean, prayers change over the years. But actually what's more likely is, and this is Rashi's explanation, is that it's actually the Chatimah of a prayer is the closing line, which often has the most spiritual power. The closing line also has Mechaye Meitim, which bring the dead to life. So you say that twice in that prayer. So probably they were waiting till he gets to the closing line, the second mention of it, which is more important. And at that point, they're thinking, wow, he's closing the prayer. Is that going to happen? Are the dead going to come back to life? Amre Berakia. So they said up in heaven. So in heaven they're nervous about it too, because he's got this power. This is what we need to think about in the story is this power, which ostensibly we would think of as being really positive, the power of prayer to make a difference in the world. Suddenly there are people that are nervous about it. It's a power, it's an energy that can, I don't know.
Overturn
the stable structure.
Yeah. What's that Disney movie? There's the Sorcerer's Apprentice. What you think of as really good, powerful things can get you messed up and can be wielded for evil designs, or you could just lose control. I guess that's the Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? You lose control of it. So that anyway, so they're worried about it in heaven. I'm Rabbi Rakia. Man gale razia ba'alma. Who revealed our heavenly secrets? The heavenly secret here is not how to bring the dead to life, but it's that Rabbi Chia has that power if you give him a particularly powerful context, like a fast. Okay? So now the heavens are worried, and again, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. They ask a very common Jewish question: whose fault is it? We need to know who's to blame. Before we can do anything, we have to yell at somebody. So let's find out who to yell at. Right? Yeah, and then we'll figure it out. So who? Right. So whose fault is it? Who revealed the secret? Amre, so somebody knew. Eliyahu gets in trouble. Eliyahu. Now Eliyahu is summoned for a heavenly court. Yeah, so God's not a character of the story. Maybe God stays above it. Kind of like the rabbi in some stories. So God said, but there is a heavenly court, and they're annoyed at Elijah. Okay, more than annoyed. Machyutun shitin pulse denora, and they whip him with 60 fiery whips, 50 fiery pulses. So that's right. Yeah. Well, maybe I would assume Elijah could afford a good lawyer, but
I don't know if your bar cards would work.
Yeah, and also, I mean, sometimes you lose a case. So, but it doesn't seem to be just punishment here. It seems to be sort of do something about it, or there's more of this, because this is what happens. Ata, so he comes. Idame lahu. Apparently, this all happens in a split second, because it happens quickly enough to stop Rabbi Chia from finishing the prayer. So Elijah, Ata idame lahu keduba denora, and he dressed himself up as a fiery bear. He disguised himself as a fiery bear. He had the ability to do it. Al banahu utiradinhu, and he interrupted the prayer, and that was it. So Rabbi Chia runs away, panicked. He sees this fiery bear. Everybody runs away, panicked, and that's the end of the episode. We'll never know whether he would have brought the dead back to life, or what would have happened if the Messiah had come too soon, because Elijah, in the nick of time, after being caught and punished by the heavenly court, stops it from happening.
Right. So why have a Messiah if you don't want him to come?
Well, that's the question. That's the question the story is asking. What does that mean for the Messiah to come? So we could talk about that for a little bit, or we could go on to the next story.
You could upend what's normally taking place, or what the plan is, God's plan.
So the obvious answer is there's a plan.
Yeah, there's a plan.
There's a plan.
And
right, that Messiah comes in good time,
right.
And there's a time. Now there are spiritual forces that may be out of control that kind of force God's hand. That's what's interesting about the story too, is forcing God's hand, and it shouldn't be done. I mean, that's the implication of the story. So I'll give you a couple just very simple earthly possibilities here. This isn't related to the Bar Kokhba stories that we read before, but there are certainly rabbis that interpreted both those rebellions as an attempt to push the coming of the Messiah before its time. It was called to push the Kates. Kates means end time. That Akiva and his cohort that supported Bar Kokhba felt they were bringing about the Messiah, and that can have disastrous consequences. So they may be offering a metaphoric story of pushing history too far before you're ready. And that's what fanatics do, and that's also the origin of the almost universal opposition to Zionism that you had in Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox Jews in the 1920s and 1930s, in the early days of Zionism, which is not the case right now. In fact, it's in some ways just an historical footnote right now. But really, the Orthodox Jews, observant Jews, were opposed to Zionism. And that was their argument. This is going to bring about the Messiah, or you're trying to, in a secular way, to bring about the end time, and it's not time for it. In fact, it was, and then Rav Kook, who was the leading rabbi in the land of Israel at the time, it's called Palestine at the time, said that in fact this is part of God's plan. I mean, he was able to convince a lot of Orthodox Jews and created religious Zionism with the idea that, in fact, this is part of God's dialectical thinking, that God is using these secular Jews to bring about. So it is part of that time. So he actually does buy into this. There can be pushing too hard at the wrong time, but Zionism is actually the right time. So you have that in here. It's a long-winded way of saying there could be some political critique here also, where just be careful about rebelling at the wrong time and let history unfold in its due course. And let's not worry about world politics so much. Let's worry about our own community.
That's assuming that the coming of the Messiah is a mortal decision. I mean, like it's
certainly assuming that,
yeah. Which doesn't seem right.
Why not?
The expectation.
The idea that you can bring about that human beings can bring about the Messiah. So that's an old traditional idea. We do the right thing, we bring about the Messiah. We do the wrong thing, we bring about the Messiah.
Right thing, then it's time for the Messiah.
Yeah. So really, what this is saying, and I'm not saying I have an answer for this, but to clarify, really, the text itself, that prayer is the wrong vehicle in bringing about the Messiah. There may be other ways to bring about the Messiah, good deeds, unity in the Jewish community, but somehow, right?
That's a fantasy.
One individual's prayer, right? Maybe one idiosyncratic spiritual genius. That's not the person you want to bring about the Messiah. It's more of a community sort of.
In other religions, the Middle East, they want to advance the end of times. And evangelical Christians think that supporting Israel is advancing the end of time.
Right.
And the jihadists, the ISIS wants to try to bring in the end of time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And think of the misery that creates. Right. When you get it into your head, I can bring about apocalyptic change. Right. First of all, that's a fanatic. How could you possibly oppose me? I'm bringing utopia. I'm bringing the Messiah. But it's led to so much human suffering, and it's still a dangerous philosophy in the Middle East, where you do have those competing, bringing about the end time. Yeah. So what? 1 million people get killed. What you get in return is utopia. I'm being flip about this, but there's certainly a thought process.
It's an
definition of
utopia. Commentary actually on our times as well as the times that they're referring to here. If you think about the time of just prior to the Bar Kokhba rebellion and going, even 100 years before that, and the other side, all of the infighting and the different sects within Judaism that were trying to gain power and control, or say my way is the right way, your way is the wrong way, and all of that created just unbelievable chaos.
Oh yeah. Take one more and then we'll
The whole idea of the Messiah, at what point historically developed and they got woven into the spiritual practice?
Okay, so that's hard to say. You'd get different answers from different historians, but it's around a little before the time of Jesus, a little bit after the time of Jesus. It's not totally clear what role Jesus played historically. Did people really think that Jesus was the Messiah, or did that take 100 years later, and then retrospectively, did he think of himself as the Messiah? But certainly the idea seemed to have been alive a little bit before the time of Jesus, and then it certainly catches on. It becomes normative. So for sure when it becomes normative, because already this is talking around the year 200. These stories, and let's say they were probably written 200 years later, but it's reflecting back to about the year 200. So by 200, it's totally normative. Like every Jew thinks that someday the Messiah is going to come. At that point, it's probably an idea that's 300 years old, at least. It's not in the Bible though, so it's not. There are passages that can be interpreted as hinting at a kind of messianic savior, but it's not directly in the Bible. So it comes through later writings.
I would say that it's probably after the destruction of the temple.
Yeah, it would certainly it becomes normative. There was probably some idea about it. Yeah. I mean, for instance, Akiva seemed to think Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. And so that's 135. So by then it was already, enough people thought of it.
He did not bring utopia.
Right, he did not. Well, no false Messiah has. The thing is, you don't know until
So the Messiah, the idea of the Messiah has always been an individual that's going to come or be.
I would say classically yes. I mean, there's not one idea of the Messiah. There's lots of different ideas.
Right.
But in general, so it's like in general, it's one person too. Now, I mean, so it was really the modern liberal Judaism that started talking about a messianic era. That a messianic era meaning a time. A better time, a time of peace and tranquility that's not necessarily brought about by an individual, but because human beings evolved to the place. Yeah, but that's a modern idea.
I've always had trouble with the notion that some individual is going to come and change or do, I mean, we're not supposed to engage in idol worship. It seems.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're right to be uncomfortable with it, although it's really deeply embedded in human history and anthropology and culture. Lots of cultures have the savior, and then you have it in in myth, and you have the
ancient Near Eastern literature. There were always
the chosen one.
Something that seems it just doesn't seem to jive well with.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you might say it's a weakness. Maybe the story's alluding to this too. Don't fall into the trap of trying to bring about the Messiah. I mean, this could be, really, despite the fact that this story has mythological tones, it could really be a polemic against otherworldly thinking. And I might just say, look, let's not worry about bringing the Messiah. We got enough problems, and just think about what's going on in your families today. Which I have to say is probably a tendency in the Talmud to take deep and profound theological issues and bring them to the household. Just say, let's worry about how we treat each other around our dinner table. And when we get that right, we'll move on to prayer that's powerful enough to bring the Messiah. And you'll see that a lot in the Talmud, which is very earthy and market oriented and home oriented. Yeah.
Isn't the idea? Isn't there an idea that the Messiah won't come until man gets to a certain place where there's peace on earth?
That's the Messiah coming at the right time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Messiah himself or herself is an individual, but it can't happen without the community. And not just a small community, but the whole world.
Yeah, it's a big community.
Being ready.
Yeah.
And being ready means
no shortcuts. That's so.
Shortcuts.
Yeah,
following.
That's one of the points of the story too. Is that we're as humans we're really tempted towards shortcuts, towards a better world and a better life.
Oh.
And there's and that's
solve it for me. That I'm really
right. Or I'll come up with the answer to healthcare. I'll come up with the answer to unemployment that will take care of everything. And when I don't have to raise taxes, I'm that's politics. So but that's human nature too. I want the answer. I want it now.
We already have
Yeah.
I think the answer is universal drip irrigation.
Yeah.
Especially in California.
If you wait for everyone for this to happen, what do you need a Messiah for?
Well, maybe that's the line. Maybe that's the ultimate lesson is you don't in the end you don't need the Messiah because if
you reach that point.
Yeah.
It still seems like it's more likely to be a divine decision than something that's affected by people.
Well, it depends how you read the story. I mean, did the bear show up in the nick of time? We'll never know. Or was it part of God's plan? It seems to me, this is giving human beings a sense of agency. Like there are people out there like Rabbi, and he could have pulled it off at the last second. Elijah was able to intervene. So we do have this kind of agency, and which is the power to be able to make radical change. But you should use that wisely. I guess that's the point of the story. Be smart about it because it can create unintended consequences that can blow up really in ways you'd never expected.
It's another lesson in exercising free will
rationally, yeah.
Right, and the legend of the Lamed-Vavniks kind of fits into that too, because in every generation, theoretically, there are 36. Right?
Yeah, Rabbi Chia is a Lamed-Vavnik. Yeah,
right.
I don't know that. The Lamed-Vavnik stories
nobody's supposed to know, right?
Right,
who they are.
That's right.
How did that get started, the Lamed-Vavnik?
So I'll answer. I'm going to stop right now.